Russia has warned that the UK's decision to supply long-range cruise missiles to Ukraine is an extremely hostile step, which represents a serious escalation in the war. Well, the British government confirmed yesterday that it was donating Storm Shadow weapon systems to give Kyiv the best chance of defending itself against invading Russian forces.
The South African Minister for Arms Control says the government has not approved any weapons shipments to Russia. That's a day after the US ambassador to the country accused Pretoria of doing exactly that. President Cyril Ramaphosa told Parliament his government was looking into the claims. In December last year, the Russian cargo vessel, the Lady R, visited South Africa's main naval base. In a press conference on Thursday, the American ambassador to South Africa said the US had intelligence that weaponry was loaded onto the ship before it returned to Russia. The envoy said the incident calls into question South Africa's proclaimed policy of neutrality between Russia and Ukraine.
Smoke rises above the Gaza Strip. Another day of death and destruction in one of the biggest flare-ups there in months. Cockpit footage released by the Israeli military shows an airstrike on an apartment block. Its target, Islamic Jihad commander Ayyad al-Husseini. The Israelis say he'd been promoted after the death of another of the group's commanders on Tuesday. Israeli strikes have killed 6 senior Islamic Jihad leaders this week, a week in which 33 Palestinians have been killed, according to Gaza's health ministry. Islamic Jihad has retaliated, firing 900 rockets towards densely populated parts of Israel. Back on French soil, Frenchman Benjamin Briere and Franco-Irishman Bernard Phelan, who were released from prison by Iran. Briere, who's 37, was arrested 3 years ago for taking photographs with a drone in an area where cameras were forbidden. He'd been sentenced to 8 years for spying and subsequently acquitted. 64-year-old Phelan was arrested 7 months ago while visiting Iran as a consultant for a tour company.
Chinese warships circled Japan as the country prepares to host G7 leaders. The Japanese Defense Ministry showed Lhasa, one of China's most powerful warships, leading to a 4-ship flotilla. Global Times, China's state-run tabloid, linked the warship's journey to Japan's recent remarks about Taiwan. Just a few days ago, Tokyo sent a message of protest to Beijing over comments by China's envoy. The envoy had said Japan will be dragged into the fire if it linked Taiwan to its own security.
Pakistan's Supreme Court has ordered the release of the former Prime Minister Imran Khan, saying his arrest on Tuesday was, quote, illegal. Let me show you the only pictures we've seen of him today walking along the corridor at the Supreme Court. This was actually going in. There was tight security, as you would expect in Islamabad, but no repeat of the violent clashes between the security forces and Imran Khan's supporters, which has left at least 10 people dead.
The South Korean Air Force on Friday kicked off its week-long intensive training, codenamed the Soaring Eagle. This is a biannual exercise held since 2008 that aims to strengthen the force's aerial defense and combat skills. Over 60 advanced aircraft, including the KF-16 and FA-50 fighters, will take to the skies near Cheongju Air Base, along with a team of 260 personnel. This large-scale event will simulate different scenarios of enemy attacks.
Thousands of protesters have taken to the streets of the Senegalese capital Dakar against President Macky Sall's refusal to rule out standing for a third term in office. The demonstrations were organised by a group called the Movement of the Living Forces of Senegal, F24, referring to the scheduled election date of February 24, 2024. The Senegal F24 group is an umbrella movement made up of more than 170 political and human rights organisations aiming to pressure Sall not to stand for election next year.
The search has just concluded for the 46-year-old man who was taken by a shark in waters here off Walker's Rock, just north of Elliston on the Eyre Peninsula. Now, the local teacher who had only moved here this year was surfing this morning with more than a dozen others, including children, when he was attacked. Witnesses have told 7 News that in the moment, surfers began swimming towards him to help, but he told them not to worry and to get themselves to shore. Emergency services were called just after 10, sparking a major search for the man from the land, air and in the water. The operation involved police, SES, CFS and many desperate members of the Elliston community. At this stage, his body remains missing.